You will hear a student asking about trips from her college. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello.
Hi, can I help you?
Yes, I was looking for the social organiser. I'm sorry, I don't know his name.
He's not here at the moment, but I can probably help you.
Oh.
He's called Paul Urquhart. That's Urquhart. My name's Will.
Oh, OK. I was wondering about trips this term.
We've got 3. 1 in June and 2 in July.
Great. Where are they to?
The first one's to Bath. We call this the Fashion and Shopping Weekend because we visit the Costume Museum.
Uh-huh.
The second one is to the National Gallery in London to see their Renoir exhibition and then free time on the Sunday. I'm sure that's going to be very popular with everyone.
And the other trip?
That's to London too. This is only a day trip. It's called Shopping and Theatre. You do your shopping in the morning and in the afternoon see a play. Not sure which one yet though, but there's always something good on at that time of year in the West End.
How much are the trips?
I haven't worked out a final price yet for the weekend trips, but last year they were £150. I guess we'll be charging about £160 this year. That's actually very good value. The day trip will obviously be much cheaper, £30.
Is it a very early start?
All trips leave here at 7 in the morning. Some people think they can turn up at 7:15, but I'm afraid we don't wait around. We aim to get back at about 5:30 in the evening.
OK. And when do I need to decide whether I'm going or not?
I'll put a notice up about a week before the trip leaves, and you'll need to sign your name to say you're interested. It'll be in reception rather than the common room where the other notices are.
OK. Thanks. I'll think it over.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Can you tell me a bit more about the trip to Bath? I've never been there.
Sure, there's loads to see and do. You'll definitely need to bring good walking shoes with you. Oh, and a camera, of course. No need for a map, as we'll give you one.
Uh-huh. Now, I know we're going to a museum and have some free time to go shopping, but what else can we do?
OK. Well, on the Sunday, you could take a bus tour of the city in the morning, and if the weather's nice, I'd buy some sandwiches and eat in the park rather than queuing up to get a seat for lunch in one of the cafes. They're always crowded.
What about in the evening?
Well, there are the usual things to do, nightclubs and so on. But there's a film festival in one of the museum gardens while we're in Bath, and that should be great. You can sit under the stars and be entertained.
Oh, sounds wonderful.
It should be. As long as it doesn't rain, of course. Anyway, another idea for a sunny day is to get a boat and go on the river for a couple of hours. You can hire bicycles too, but I think that would be too tiring if it's hot.
What about the hotel? I forgot to ask about that.
Sure, it's called the Regent and it's modern. There's a restaurant and I think they're building a gym, but it won't be ready when we go. However, what they do have is a small indoor swimming pool, so remember to take a swimsuit with you.
It all sounds great. I'll definitely go. Thanks a lot, Will.
Section 2. You are going to hear a tutor talking to a group of philosophy students. First, look at questions 11 to 13. For these questions, complete the blank spaces in the table as you listen to the first part of the talk. Write no more than 2 words for each answer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Dr. Russell, and I am your tutor for philosophy this year. I think we're all here. Let's see, 5, 6, 7, yes, that's everyone. Before we look at the 3 lectures you've had on philosophy this week, I would just like to run through a few things about what you can expect of me as tutor and what in turn we expect of you. As for myself, my function as tutor is to help you in all things relating to your work in the philosophy course. The help that I am able to give is of course mainly academic. For personal matters, I can refer you to other support services in the university, ranging from counselling to welfare. One thing that I would point out is that if you feel that you need to talk to someone, no matter how insignificant it is, don't leave it. Oh, and the last thing is, if you do need to make an appointment, the times are listed on the door of my room. You just write your name in a time slot. But I would point out that the appointment slots get booked up quite quickly. If it's urgent, catching me between sessions is the best idea. That way we can sort something out quickly. No questions?
Before the talk continues, look at questions 14 to 20. As you listen to the second part of the talk, answer the questions. For questions 14 to 19, circle the correct letter, A, B, or C. For question 20, write no more than 3 words for the answer.
Okay. As regards you as students, the tutorials are voluntary. You're not obliged to attend, but you are encouraged to do so. Last year, for the first time, a register was kept of students attending lectures, and this year tutors are being asked to keep a register of tutorial attendance. This is not a formal register, and not all tutors will be doing it, but in the philosophy department, all of us have chosen to keep registers. Another point that's being emphasised this year is punctuality. When we did exit questionnaires, we found that people arriving late for tutorials and lectures was the single most annoying thing for the majority of students. I would therefore ask you to try to be on time for the tutorials, and for all your other classes for that matter. As regards the tutorials themselves, we will have a review of the philosophy lectures of the week before, with the discussion being led by one of you each week. There is, of course, some planning involved, but you should rely primarily on the notes you made at the lectures. This will not take up the whole of the 90 minutes allocated to the tutorial. For the rest of the time, we will look at a particular philosopher, period, or concept for which you will be expected to do some preparation each week. This will range from reading about a particular individual or concept to preparing a brief outline on a subject of your choice. How much you put into this depends on you, but we're not expecting in-depth analysis at this stage. Are there any questions so far?
I'd just like to ask whether the work we do in the tutorials counts towards our continuous assessment, and if so, how much?
I was just coming on to that point. All the work you do in the way of essays and project work that is graded counts towards your continuous assessment grades. The mini presentations and lecture discussions will not be graded, but obviously, as time goes on, these activities will, I hope, have an impact on your work and hence your scores. Does that answer your question?
Basically, yes, but what about...
That's the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between a student called Mark and his teacher, Professor Jones. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, Mark. What can I do for you?
Oh, hi, Professor Jones. I've come to ask you a big favor.
Let me guess, Mark. You want more time for your essay assignment. You're the third student I've seen today, all with the same request. It beats me why a few people leave their planning to the last minute and then think that they can come at a day's notice and get a reprieve. It's really not fair to all the students who are well planned and organized, is it?
Yes, you're right, and I'm really sorry I need to ask. I've never asked for an extension before.
So, Mark, why should I grant you an extension when I said no to everyone else today?
Well, Professor Jones, I really do have a valid reason. It's not just the usual, like I have a cold, and I have a certificate from my doctor, or my computer crashed and I lost all my data. I wouldn't bother you with those old excuses. You see, my twin brother was planning to get married next weekend, but last week his girlfriend told him the wedding was off, and he landed on my doorstep. He was really upset. I couldn't just tell him to go away because I was busy, and of course I would have had 3 assignments due this week, and all my study plans just went out the window.
I see. So why didn't you come to see me a week ago when your brother first turned up?
Because I was hoping I would still be able to get it done, but I just can't manage it. Well, actually I have written the required number of words more or less, but frankly I feel it's terrible. I don't want to let myself down by handing it in as it is at the moment, and I really don't want to drop my grade point average by getting a low mark on this assignment.
Well, the course handbook states very clearly that at least 5 days' notice is required for any extension, except in emergencies. Those rules were designed to make it fair for everyone, you see. You're supposed to submit a request on the proper form, and you can send it by email. And you also need to make an appointment and discuss your request in person, as you have done now. Your problem does come very squarely under the family issues category, so you probably would have got some extra time if you'd done that. I'm not really inclined to grant this request now, you know.
Yes, I know I've really messed up. I suppose I'll just have to hand it in as it is and take a lower grade.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Well, at least you've made a start, which is more than can be said for your other colleagues today. Have you got what you've done so far? Come on, we'll look through it together, and I'll see if I can make a few suggestions for a quick fix. How about that?
Oh, thank you. Yes, here it is on my laptop.
Well, let's see. Let's start with the bibliography. Yes, you've consulted most of the sources I suggested, but you don't have any references of your own, and that was part of the task, wasn't it? You need at least 3 references of your own, see?
Yes, I know. I did find one more. McDonald and Ferris, 2014.
Okay, that's a good one. I suggest you look at their reference list too, and chase up a couple more from there. You should be able to find everything you need in the online library databases, especially LanguageLine.
Yes, okay. So what about the essay structure and the argument? Are they okay, or am I barking up the wrong tree?
Well, you just seem to jump straight into your first point here. I'm not sure where your essay is going. Where's the introduction?
Oh, right. I always leave that till the end and write it after I've finished the rest of the essay. That way, it ties into what I've already written. Well, that's what we were taught in the study skills course anyway.
Yes, and you're quite right. So tell me about your ideas. What's your main argument?
Well, I'm not really sure. I think I understand the 3 opposing theories okay, but I don't really have a strong opinion about which one is correct. I was more thinking of explaining them all as clearly as I can, and then giving the evidence for each one. I don't think there's a clear-cut right or wrong. Well, that's my opinion anyway. Do we need to say that one is better than the other 2?
No, you don't, and what you are planning to do is often the best way to go about it. Well, I've been skimming through what you've written while we've been talking, and one thing you definitely must do before you submit this assignment is to edit it for grammar and spelling mistakes. There are a lot of errors here, just simple things that are easy to fix. But still, I can see you've done the basic work, and I do sympathize with your brother. It must be very difficult for him. So I'll give you 1 extra day on this essay.
Oh, thank you, Professor Jones. Thank you. I'll hand it in before 5 p.m. on Wednesday, then.
Yes, that's the final deadline. Goodbye now.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear a talk given by a guest lecturer in the Continuing Education Department. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the Continuing Education Department for hosting this series of lectures on people behind the names you thought were fiction. Welcome to this talk on the Grand Old Duke of York. I'm sure you're all familiar with the old nursery rhyme. The Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, and he marched them down again, and so on. But did you know that the Duke of York, immortalized in this popular song, was actually Frederick Augustus, second son of King George III of England and Queen Charlotte? He achieved fame in this way because of the humiliation he suffered at the hands of the French during the Revolutionary Wars at the end of the 18th century. Frederick was born on the 16th of August, 1763, and from the age of 17 he had been trained as a soldier. When war broke out between England and France in 1793, his father, the king, insisted that he should command the British contingent that was being dispatched to Flanders to cooperate with the Austrians and the Dutch. The Duke was a brave soldier, but remember he was only 30 at the time. Not only was he young, but he was also inexperienced in battle, and was unable to cope with the enthusiastic French Revolutionary Army. He was let down by his allies too, and in spite of the arrival of 10,000 fresh troops from England, his campaigns were a disaster. He was driven out of Dunkirk in September 1793, Flanders in May 1794, and Belgium in July 1794. Finally, during the winter of 1794 to 1795, his army retreated to the border of Hanover, and, with his unsuccessful campaigns over, the Duke returned to England. It was after this military fiasco that the Duke of York came to be, rather unkindly, satirized in song. Would you believe, despite all this, King George III arranged his son's promotion to the position of Commander-in-Chief of the army in 1798, and in the following year he was appointed to command an army sent to invade Holland. Again he was unsuccessful, and this confirmed the general opinion that he was not capable of commanding an army in the field. Nevertheless, the rhyme is a bit cruel and harsh, because it doesn't take into account the nature of the soldiers who served with Frederick. All the blame for lack of success should not have been attached to the Duke alone, because the army he had under his command was made up from what is commonly described as the scum of the earth. This is a somewhat offensive term, used to refer to a group of people regarded as despicable and worthless. Who were they, these ordinary soldiers? Well, they were mostly vicious, brutal ex-convicts, or raw recruits, and elderly men. The officers who commanded them were all untrained as military men. In fact, they were anybody who could afford to buy a commission. But here's the really great thing that, unfortunately, the Duke of York is not remembered for. He realized that this was a hopeless kind of army, and he set about improving conditions in order to recruit higher-quality soldiers. He introduced padres. Are you familiar with the term? No? Well, let me explain. You see, members of the British Armed Forces are generally Christians of one denomination or another, and a padre is a Christian cleric or chaplain who ministers to the soldiers and attends to their spiritual needs, without belonging to any particular grouping within the Christian faith. Now, where was I? Yes, Frederick introduced padres, doctors, and veterinary surgeons to the battlefield. Why vets? To attend to the horses, of course. Remember, we're talking about late 18th century battlefields. He was also the founder of the Royal Military College for the training of officers at Sandhurst. Yes, the very same one where the princes and other members of the royal family received their military training today. Frederick also founded the Duke of York's School in London for sons of soldiers killed in battle. His name is perhaps better commemorated by this school in Chelsea than by the column that stands at the top of Waterloo Steps in St. James's Park. In 1807, the Duke was involved in a scandal with a woman, and as a result resigned as Commander-in-Chief. But he was reinstated in 1811 by his elder brother, the Prince Regent, who later became George IV of England. He continued in this post until his death in 1827.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.